What if this time the betrayal was financial rather than emotional? Because, based on the current allegations, text messages, hotel rooms, or covert phone conversations did not lead this situation to fall apart. It came apart via something much more intentional: cash. There were rumors that Kirk Frost had access to an other bank account that wasn't related to his family, wasn't related to his business, and wasn't supposed to be found. Additionally, the name associated with that account raised eyebrows right away: Washington, Jasmine. If accurate, this wasn't just one error. It had to do with infrastructure. Due to secret accounts don't just happen to exist. They are covertly funded, designed, and maintained throughout time. Financial concealment also implies that something emotional had already gone too far before the paperwork did. Rasheeda returns to concentration at that point. The story that is making the rounds online claims that there was no major meltdown or screaming match captured on tape after the account was found. Rather, there was something far more final and colder. Command. Rasheeda is accused of not arguing. She didn't bargain. She took action. All the money purportedly associated with that account was handed out quickly and decisively, making it clear where power now rested. That was not retaliation. If it is accurate, it was a declaration, because cutting off financial access isn't only the end of a connection. Leverage is being undermined. They claim that you are no longer benefiting from this system, and for that reason, compared to earlier scandals, this tale feels heavier. It had nothing to do with humiliation. It had to do with exposure, because intentions are no longer arguable once money comes up. There is no tone to numbers. When it comes to planning, accounts are truthful. Furthermore, if this explanation is true, it implies a degree of premeditation that modifies the interpretation of everything else. Therefore, whether or not this accusation is startling is not the true question. It's whether Rasheeda began regaining control at this point and ceased reacting. Everything changed when the topic of money came up. Based on the allegations, this wasn't a situation discovered via rumors or envy. Patterns, erratic transfers, inexplicable balances, and financial behavior that didn't match what Rasheeda thought was going on in her own marriage were all signs of it. And for that reason, this accusation had a greater impact than any previous rumors of infidelity. Since it is possible to deny feelings, money leaves a trace, but messages may be explained. According to the accusations making the rounds online, there was a separate account that wasn't officially revealed, wasn't linked to public commercial companies, and wasn't connected to shared finances. Not only was the account itself concerning, but so was the purported destination of the money. The name Jasmine Washington was mentioned frequently in side chats and whispers. If that relationship is accurate, everything is The purpose of secret accounts is not convenience. They are there to maintain control. They enable the transfer of resources without supervision, the preservation of autonomy from group decisions, and above all the preservation of leverage in circumstances where openness might result in repercussions. Because of this, this accusation feels distinct from previous controversies involving Frost. Kirk. They were presented as individual shortcomings. If true, this one implies preparation. Intent is implied by planning. As stated by the although under discussion, the discovery did not result in an instant conflict. Before every public response, it was verified. Balances were checked, transfers were examined, and questions were asked in private. Moreover, the reaction wasn't explosive once enough aligned to dispel uncertainty. It was a procedural matter. This is where Rasheeda's purported action is noteworthy. Rather than engage in conflict, she supposedly behaved inside the financial framework that she was already familiar with. It is said that money was transferred. According to reports, access was restricted. Authority, not drama, neutralized the purported account. If accurate, it wasn't an emotional choice. It had to do with administration. Additionally, because administrative acts don't require consent, they convey the clearest messages. This is made more difficult by the way it aligns with earlier dynamics. Involving Jasmine, unresolved tension has always been uncomfortably near to her presence. Viewers claim that when money is involved, situations that previously seemed unclear suddenly invite reinterpretation. Why certain silences felt safe, why some reactions felt assured, and why some boundaries felt loose. Money explains how those dynamics are maintained, but it doesn't generate them. One more timing is the reason this accusation became popular. It didn't appear during the height of the drama. It appeared after patterns had been identified. Sequencing is important. Financial claims that are made after the deadline frequently come as confirmation rather than accusations. However, it's crucial to emphasize what this is and isn't. No confirmed documents have been made available to the general public. These assertions have not been verified by any official statements. All of this is still alleged. However, because they pose a particular kind of inquiry, accusations involving money typically linger longer than others. Why hasn't this been categorically refuted if it isn't true? When it comes to financial matters, quiet is more significant than when it comes to emotional ones. Because if a claim is untrue, a straightforward explanation frequently fixes it. In the absence of information, conjecture fills the void, and financial speculation rapidly intensifies, particularly when public people are involved. In Rasheeda's purported response, transferring money rather than public confrontation follows a pattern that observers may identify. In the past, she has opted for control over conflict and containment over turmoil. This story would support that strategy if it is true. Kirk believes that the purported silence about the financial details encourages interpretation rather than confirmation, and over time, public view is shaped by interpretation. For this reason, the financial aspect won't stop. It implies structure as well as betrayal, a building that needed upkeep, secrecy, and purpose. Additionally, when the goal is consequently, previous actions begin to appear less coincidental. The most significant change here has nothing to do with innocence or guilt. It has to do with power. If Rasheeda actually moved all the money associated with that account, the message had nothing to do with punishment. It was about getting rid of leverage, dependency, and a system that secretly rewarded one side. Additionally, systems don't break down emotionally. They disintegrate monetarily. Relationships can occasionally endure emotional breakdowns of trust. Everything changes when there is a financial breach of trust. Because of this, if this accusation is accurate, it targets the basis of Rasheeda and Kirk Frost's marriage in a manner that previous scandals never did. Accusations of cheating cause emotional turmoil. Structural harm is caused by secret money. Due to money is more than simply money in a marriage. It's strength, strategy, and vision. Decisions may have been taken outside of the collaboration, according to a concealed account. And once that boundary is passed, reconciliation becomes less about forgiveness and more about having to do with control. Because of this, the purported response is more significant than the actual allegation. Rasheeda's behavior was corrective rather than impulsive if she actually moved every cent associated with that account. In an area where authority had been subtly circumvented, it restored it. Additionally, the emotional balance is permanently altered once financial authority is restored. The marriage is no longer based on trust after that. It is functioning according to terms. For such terms to be felt, they don't have to be made public. They manifest in terms of access. Who authorizes what? Who manages financial and non-financial mobility, and in accordance with the story that a significant shift in control occurred. Viewers observed a shift in tone subsequently because of this. Not loud disputes, not spectacular departures. A chillier silence, generally speaking. Cold.com indicates that decisions have already been made. Kirk's role in the marriage is altered by the suggestion of a hidden account. He becomes someone under supervision rather than a collaborator, and supervision modifies behavior because to a lack of options rather than fear. Leverage is produced by financial independence. It is eliminated by financial constraints. This accusation feels definitive because of this. Without verification, because the system that permitted concealment would no longer be in place if the monies were transferred. Furthermore, earlier patterns would not be able to operate in the same manner without that system. The dynamic doesn't restart. It reorganizes. This purported action also suggests something more to Rasheeda. Enforcement of boundaries without discussion, not requesting explanations, acting within her rights, and proceeding without waiting for accountability. That strategy is consistent with the way she has managed business for many years. She is not an emotional leader. She takes the lead. With performance, furthermore, execution doesn't encourage discussion. This is also why, should reconciliation occur, it would not seem as it did previously. After an affair, you can move on as equals. Unseeing financial fraud and going back to blind partnership is difficult. From here on, every reconciliation would be subject to statutory or informal requirements for transparency. Supervision and separation of relationships are profoundly altered by situations and assets. Verification takes the role of presumption. That's realism, not resentment. Public opinion is another factor contributing to the sense that this moment cannot be undone. Once fans think money was concealed, and they lose faith in intentions more quickly than in feelings. Instead of asking why, the audience now asks how long. How much time was allotted for this? For what duration was this funded? How long did one side profit from secrecy? Apologies don't make those questions go away. Furthermore, the ramifications for Jasmine go beyond personal turmoil if her name is actually connected to this accusation. Financial participation implies reliance rather than coincidence. Dependency also modifies the interpretation of previous encounters. When money is involved, confidence takes on a different appearance. Silence appears to be shielded. Distance looks financed. This is the reason this news will not remain a rumor. It casts doubt on the notion that previous scandals were unique. It alludes to continuity, a system that ran silently up until it didn't. Additionally, systems don't collapse emotionally. When resources are reduced, they fall apart. Marriages either completely reset or discreetly dissolve at this stage. Restructuring, not announcements. The message was not limited to Kirk. Even if Rasheeda managed to recover every dime, she did it for herself. A proclamation that whatever occurs next will take place on her terms rather than in a system that she did not approve of. Furthermore, once that line is established, it is rarely removed. The account didn't receive much attention when the money claim came to light. It changed to behavior because when money is at stake, individuals start observing responses, rather than arguing about feelings. In this instance, the responses or lack thereof said more than any words could. The accusation altered Jasmine Washington's place in the story right away. Prior to her arrival, there was a gray area that was complex, contentious, and easily written off as personal history. That ambiguity narrowed once money was involved. If a genuine financial relationship implies reliance, reliance implies preparation, and preparation attracts attention. There was no overt denial or defense. It was silent. No prompt explanation, no categorical denial of the assertion, and no direct attempt to end the story. Nothing was confirmed by that quiet, but it encouraged speculation. Furthermore, popular compassion is shaped by interpretation. Viewers started going back to old scenes in new settings. Once casual moments suddenly felt deliberate. Once confident reactions now feel safeguarded. Furthermore, when money is involved, confidence without accountability seldom reads well. This is where the public's view was skewed. Because of Rasheeda's self-control rather than her spectacle, sympathy grew for her. She had poor posture. She didn't get aggressive. As stated by the story, she took decisive, silent action. Audiences are drawn to such kind of response because it conveys agency rather than victimization. In her case, silence seemed deliberate. In comparison, others' quiet appeared evasive. That difference is important. Silence is not judged equally in public scandals. It is evaluated according to who gains from it. Silence is interpreted as strategic when it seems to safeguard access or authority. It is interpreted as strong when it seems to defend limits. Another thing was brought to light by the aftermath: exhaustion. Audiences have had enough of heartfelt apologies that don't alter behavior. They're sick of unaccountable loops that restart. When money is involved, it seems like the last line, because money demands work to maintain and intention to conceal. This accusation persisted because of this. Everything that had come before it was accusations of cheating looked more like symptoms than errors. Silence appeared more like insulation than maturity. Calm responses sometimes appeared more like confinement than progress. Additionally, this is why didn't anyone jump to either side of the story. The concept of financial secrecy is objective. There was either access or it wasn't. Money either moved or didn't. Additionally, the public swiftly filled the void left by the lack of clarification. For Kirk Frost, the issue shifted from character defense to structural explanation. Additionally, elucidating structure calls for specific information that was never provided. Thus, the focus of the narrative changed from what occurred to what did not. There were no bank statements made public, no outright denials, no timeline adjustments, just silence. And in this instance, stillness felt heavy. Redistribution of power is the most significant implication here. The dynamic would be irreversibly altered if Rasheeda actually regained financial control. Reconciliation or separation in public or privately. When leverage is removed, nothing proceeds in the same manner. And for that reason, rather than intensifying, the plot stalled. When a system fails, it doesn't shout. They leave still. People are currently responding to that stillness. Not the accusation in se, but the lack of subsequent action. Just distance. No correction. No distance is illuminating. The clamor has since subsided, but the repercussions have not. If the accusation is true, there was no emotional change. It takes place structurally. Furthermore, since structure dictates access, arguments cease there. Behavior changes as access does. Rasheeda interprets the silent answer as definitive, not because a marriage can't last, but rather because it can't do so in the same manner. It becomes impossible to compromise on financial transparency. The assumption is replaced by oversight. If there was a reconciliation, it would be bounded, confirmed, measurable, and conditional. That's prevention, not punishment. The ramifications are different for Kirk Frost. Allegations of concealed finances call for explanations rather than heartfelt apologies. Moreover, reputation changes gradually but irreversibly in the absence of explanations. Calm is no longer a sign of maturity. It sounds like captivity. Quietly, public trust erodes. The silence has the greatest significance for Jasmine Washington. Ambiguity decreases when money, even purportedly, is involved. Viewers begin arguing proximity instead of purpose. Moments from the past are reconstructed. Confidence is rebranded, and the lack of denial becomes a signal rather than a conclusion. For this reason, everything is altered by money. Allegations of cheating request pardon. Control is necessary for financial secrecy. The power dynamic resets after the financial system is reorganized. There is nothing left to argue over. So arguments don't get more heated. The mechanism that made secrecy possible, if it existed, it is no longer operational. Furthermore, outdated patterns cannot recur in the absence of a functional system. The aftermath feels stagnant, unresolved, unhealed, and contained because of this. Containment is frequently confused with tranquility. It isn't, it's a boundary-enforced pause. Furthermore, boundaries, particularly monetary ones, don't always make themselves known. They work. whatever comes next is probably going to remain a secret. Just distance, supervision, and decisions made away from cameras. No dramatic posts or public demands. When money is involved, that's how actual repercussions manifest. Due to money, it reallocates instead of arguing. Cheating was never the only aspect of this tale. It had to do with infrastructure. If these assertions are accurate, the revelation wasn't the most significant event. Rather, it was the answer, because someone is not reacting when they prioritize structure over spectacle. The board is being reset. Thus, ask yourself this: if funding is necessary for secrecy, what else is upkeep? Who is protected when financial allegations are followed by silence? Does behavior change, or does distance become permanent when access is restricted? Because when it comes to relationships, arguments are sparked by emotions. They are ended by money. Leave a comment with your thoughts. Before it vanishes from the timeline, share this. Moreover, recall that not all betrayals are emotional. At times, they're financed. That not all betrayals are emotional. At times, they're financed.